welcome everybody. I'm Mandy Sanghera, and it's a great honour to be here moderating a panel for Professors Beyond Borders for Tessie and the whole team. It's really fantastic. And I'm going to be moderating a panel on intersectionality, the dual barriers of racism and sexism. So I'm really excited because we have some great panelists from across the globe. So the first person we have is Yanoh, a senior project officer from New York Department of Health and Mental Health and Hygiene Board, and it also is a member and a volunteer lecturer for Professors Beyond Borders. We also have Lorna Mae Johnson, a Democratic National Committee member, the DNC Assistant Treasurer, also for Professors Beyond Borders. And we also have Loreen, a lecturer, I believe, at Birmingham University. I believe she is a lecturer on sociology. And I will be also joined by
Shirley is an executive managing consultant and a branding communication expert from Nigeria.
Oh, fantastic. Welcome, Shirley. Thank you. I'm really excited and I'm really pleased to welcome all the panelists. So first of all, I would like to sort of start. Is there all the panelists here, first of all? Yes, I can see you. Sorry, you are. So my first question is, it's around asking you around what role does intersectionality play in further education and how can we overcome that? So I'm going to start with Yanoh, if you could only start.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Nice to see everyone and some familiar faces as well. So yes, my name is Yanoh Jalloh. I'm an adjunct lecturer at New York Institute of Technology and also work at the New York City Department of Health. And yes, also a volunteer lecturer with Professor Without Borders. So really happy to be here. So in terms of intersectionality, I think it plays a great role in academia. I was kind of looking at my own experiences and doing some reading as well, and someone kind of framed it, I think really well, and they said kind of being Black and a woman is a double whammy in academia. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just very relevant, and I'm sure we'll get into it more in the conversation. But I do believe that there are some barriers that being Black and being a woman we come across in academia, and I think they're very parallel to what Black women experience in the corporate world or like in the nonprofit world. I think some of the experiences are very parallel.
Brilliant. I'm going to ask the same question to Lorna Mae. And because I want to just sort of see what everyone's thoughts are, and then I'm going to get into the bigger conversation as well. And is Lorna here? I'll come back. Loreen, I'll ask you the same question, actually, first of all, and then I'll carry on with our next question.
Okay.
Really.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I agree with Yanoh that it is central to discussing experiences of Black women. And it's not only, I feel, gender intersecting with race, it's also other factors, social class. And like you said, we'll talk about it later, like for myself as an immigrant, that those experiences, those layers are very much central to how we experience discrimination, exclusion. Even sometimes it gets confusing because you don't know, am I being excluded because I'm a woman or I'm Black? So I believe and I agree that it is central to the conversation around being Black in academia.
Okay, thank you. And Lorna, we were going to just ask you as well, because I just wanted to sort of set the scene around intersectionality in further education and sort of ask people a little bit about their own experience before we go on into more conversations.
Okay, I think I agree with both of the previous speakers in terms of it's no different than what you experience in corporate structures. The same thing, whether it's by class, social class, who you know, nepotism, or status in terms of social class, or the mere fact of being the color of your skin. So yeah. I agree with the other speakers.
Thank you. So Shirley, what about yourself? Are you able to share your experience maybe from Africa and stuff about intersectionality?
Good afternoon, everybody. Shirley Hills here. I'm pleased to join in on the conversations about intersectionality. For me here, we see a lot of this happening, especially in the African continent. And I believe it's no different for people of color in the Western world. I run the Elite Women Network International, and we continue to give our voice to gender equity because we believe that when women begin to rise up and position themselves as people of worth, not defined by our gender, we may be able to break that intersectionality issue. Yeah. So I agree with the previous speakers, and I'm hoping to get some more insights as we progress.
Brilliant. So that's really fantastic, and it's fantastic that we're all on the same page. And I think that sometimes a lot of people never want to talk about intersectionality. They never want to talk about gender, racism, and look at all those different barriers that are affecting people. Because one of the things that I have, just before I was going to do this panel, I was talking to a couple of my lecturer friends, and I feel like some of those women have not had to come over so many other barriers, because actually they, being white British, have been given opportunities. So what they were saying is sometimes in our organisation we get a box and we tick it and we've got somebody, well, we've got the woman on the board, but actually they don't think about diversity. And actually she said, Mandy, there is a lot of unconscious bias that is happening in education. So I would like to ask all of you about your experience. Would you agree with my colleague who actually raised that actually it's quite a difficult sector to work in education and academia, and actually it's quite hard for women sometimes to get into positions of power, and actually she felt that it was a little bit easier for herself, and she compared herself to some of her BME peers and felt that actually sometimes organisations will tick a box by saying we've got a woman, but actually not think any further than that. So Yanoh, I'm going to come to you and sort of maybe ask you your thoughts, and coming from the States, your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think I do agree with your friend, and I think that's kind of what the epitome of white supremacy is, right? So kind of this rush saying, oh, we have a representation, right? But not really looking at what that means or taking the time to, I guess, determine how you can like utilize, you know, this diverse staff that we have. So, yeah, I think I would definitely agree with that. I think in general, in academia, it's very difficult. I think, and I want to agree with one of my fellow panelists about the intersectionalities about like socioeconomic status, right? So I joke with my friends that it's hard being an adjunct. It's expensive, right? Because you have absolutely no job security, right? You have no benefits, right? And I was telling my husband the other day, I got a notice from where I adjunct at NYIT the other day that I got a raise, and I've been working there for 6 years, and that's my first raise. And that's the fact that I even accepted that. I was mad at myself, but you know, it's very difficult. I think for me, you know, I have full-time employment, but some, you know, a lot of Black women and, you know, minorities in general, Black and brown folks, you know, they kind of do several adjuncts to kind of make up one salary, right? So it's very challenging. Go ahead.
And one of the questions is, because actually I was talking to somebody at the World Bank recently, and we were on a panel, and she informed me in the US that Afro-Caribbean women and Hispanic women are paid like nearly 40 to 60 cents a difference in the dollar, in each pound, a dollar that they're being paid. So actually, it's not just about the gender equality, but actually women of colour were being paid like 30 cents less, or even 40 cents to the pound, to the dollar, sorry. So that was really quite shocking and quite disturbing to hear that actually you're doing the same job as your male counterpart, but because you're an Afro-Caribbean woman or a Hispanic woman or an Asian woman, that actually you're going to be paid 30 to 60 cents less than the dollar, which is really quite shocking in the 21st century, really.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would also kind of add, kind of talking more about lack of job security when you're an adjunct, because I can talk about that experience. I have 2 children. So I know when I went on, I guess, maternity leave, but you don't get maternity leave when you're an adjunct, right? It was kind of a risk that, you know, you might lose your classes when you come back. So there's this economic impact as well. And I think there's a kind of issue of devaluing the experience of the Black woman, right? And the decision making. And I hope no one at PROWIBO gets upset at me for this, but I know I joined PROWIBO as a volunteer professor in 2017. Had a great experience with Charlie and some other folks in Sierra Leone. 2018, I wasn't able to join because of work. And 2019, I was pregnant, right? So this summer, 2020, I actually was excited about coming back, and then realizing I wasn't invited back, and then later found out I wasn't invited back because I had a child. And, you know, the assumption was that I needed time to rest. So that kind of devaluing like kind of a Black woman's experience and a Black woman's choice is, you know, that's what white supremacy is, right? So it's, you know, things like that. I think that we have to kind of make sure that we're going out our way to advocate for ourselves. But I don't want to take all the time, so I'll definitely pass it over.
And Lorna, I was going to ask you a question around what stops women of colour stepping up and asking for their worth? What is it? Is it cultural? What is it that people may not actually?
That is really interesting, because I will liken this into what we're experiencing now in politics, where this year we have a lot of women running for some so-called running, which we've never had that before. Heard that term before. Running for the vice presidential position is new, because people may be doing it in different ways. But when women came out this year, it was like, wow, these women are not even using any kind of diplomacy as to whether they want the job. They're saying, yes, they want the job. I am ready for the job, and I'm interested in the job. And if I'm asked, I'm going to say, yes, I'll take the job, because I'm a servant and I will serve the country whichever way. In the past, you ask people those questions and they would try to, you know, I don't want to talk about that now. My goal is to see the country, and you know, different way of saying it. But this year they came out strong saying, and they were being talked about negatively. It's like women become too ambitious, is one of the terms that were used. So I would say the same thing in any structure, or when women come out and say that they want things, they become too forward, too ambitious, and it is not looked at them favorably. When men are in getting position, they get the position and grow in it and show that they can do the work. But for a woman to get the position, they have to show that they have the qualification and can do the job before they even get the job.
Yeah, it's quite a lot of profiling. Loreen, I was going to ask you, because you're in the UK, and I would really like to ask you around different salary, you know, like you're working in Birmingham, you're working in an intercity, and there's a lot of deprivation, there's a lot of inequalities, and things have come to the surface in recent months. And I think COVID in the UK has brought a lot of things where children have not been able to go back to university and schools. Do you think that that will have an impact going forward, or do you think that we would be able to?
I will say, because I think I sort of similar experience to Yanoh, in the UK we call it fixed term contracts. So I was working as a sociology lecturer in Birmingham, but I live in another area that's an hour and a half away. And so when we're talking about, I guess you're asking a question around salaries, is actually, to be honest, in previous jobs I've been paid really low wage, and it was challenging and quite difficult to kind of challenge that, because you're just told this is what, you know, part-time lecturers are paid. So it's not like anyone is having a conversation around what they are getting paid if they're my white counterparts. But I'm glad that for me in this role that it was fixed term contract, and that actually it was a colleague and also happened to then be my sort of senior manager who fought for us to get the salaries that we did that were quite good. So it was someone else fighting on our behalf to say, no, they deserve better salary. And also because of my experience outside of academia in public sector, voluntary sector, you find that it's undermined, so it's not appreciated at the same level. So she actually had to fight to say, look, the fact that this person is not necessarily been on academia, for 20 years or whatever, she's bringing in these skills and this knowledge that is valuable. So we need to pay her as much as we are paying other staff. So I know there are challenges, but I think one of the challenges I've specifically faced is around being a parent, being a mother. As a single parent, I'm an immigrant, although I've lived in this country for 20 plus years. So went into academia as a mature student, as a single parent, and didn't have sort of the social capital in regards to knowledge of the system. I was educated in a different country. So I didn't really understand, didn't have those resources to support me through my journey into academia. So I think this is where you see issues of gender, like I said, around class, and myself, immigration status. As an immigrant, you're not familiar. I was a single parent, a mom, so I can't be at university all day to network and network with senior managers. I need to get home because I've got a child. So I think personally, my experience, it was more the lack of mentoring, the lack of support that has hindered my progression within academia, where I'm having to take up fixed term contracts. And it's difficult to negotiate, I guess, salary if you're desperate for a job. I need to pay bills. So I don't necessarily may not have the power to negotiate sort of that salary if I really am desperate for a job.
Okay.
So it's quite challenging.
I'm going to come back to you in another question in a moment, but I'm just going to go over to Shirley. Shirley, what about in Nigeria, in Africa? How difficult is it for women to sort of negotiate their salary and their work and sort of?
I think it's a bit worse over in this side of the world, right? But more and more women are beginning to rise up to the challenge of, demanding their worth, and not just demanding their worth, but developing themselves to be able to demand their worth. And I always say that there's really no institution, there's really no employer that can actually pay you your worth. But, when we talk about service and what you get back as a remuneration or salary, it's difficult over here because you have to consider parenting, just like every other speaker has, actually thrown light on. You have to consider parenting. I'm in the private sector, but I have clients in all of the sectors. I have worked with so many people from different sectors, in the political space, in the public sector, and I see this every day. And I'm an employer. Most of my, we have an 80% female representation in my company. It's a group of companies, and not because, and this is not because of, feminism or anything. I wrote an article that made it to the Guardian Nigeria papers about not being a feminist. So this is not about being feminist. Yeah. This is about women. This is about women actually delivering the value. True that, Mandy, you talked about women having to men getting the roles and easily and running with it, but women, okay, I think that's it was Lorna that said that, and then women have to show themselves, show value before they are actually even given the role, given the job. The truth is, there are no sentiments to this thing. While we continue to put our voice to the conversations, women need to rise up to begin to show that they have the value that can be brought to the table, and we need to build confidence. We need to put a brand on ourselves. We need to say, this is who we are and this is what we want. And as much as we continue to demand our worth, in a short while, posterity will favor us. I believe that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, one of the things is, I kind of started and then I've gone off a little bit, but one of the questions I'm thinking about is, this pandemic has really affected women more than men, because actually they've taken on multiple responsibilities of caring. They're becoming a teacher for their child because the child is not at school. They're And if you're not in a permanent contract and you're in a temporary contract, like you said, fixed term contract, or you're kind of like sort of getting like work on an ad hoc and it's agile working and whatever else. So you don't have that security of employment. So you don't have the opportunity to be furloughed. So that security, people are becoming very worried about that. And so we want to look at how can we support women? How can we sort of have a bit more of a conversation that women, are not further discriminated against and more further disadvantaged against? How can we level out that playing field is the next question, really. So how can we, going forward, post-COVID, level that playing field? Because we now realise that a lot of women are not going to go to college and schools because actually they've left and they're worried about taking on a debt. People are worried about, meeting their basic needs, about keeping a roof over their head. So I'm going to start with you again, Yanoh, and just sort of ask you your thoughts on this about the pandemic and actually how do we support women who are in vulnerable positions?
I mean, I think it starts, with everyone, and really what needs to happen is people calling it out, how they see it, right? And if that means you offend your colleague that you go to lunch with, or you offend your boss, that's okay. And I think we need these call outs, not from, the women of color, but from the people it doesn't impact. So like my co-panelist Loreen was saying, someone else actually was the one that advocated for the salary increase, right? So we need it to come from the people they don't expect it to come from, right? So that's how you become an ally, right? So that's how you become a co-conspirator. Like if we want to support, we need people to not only post a hashtag, right, but actively work with us and be a co-conspirator, right? I think those are the only ways that have proved somewhat effective, right? It's like taking a step up from being an ally. We need you to be a co-conspirator with us, and we need you to call it out as you see it, because the fact is the repercussions might be less lethal if someone else is doing it than the woman of color, right? Because I know I always say my fear is always coming across as the angry Black woman, right? And oftentimes we're kind of told that, this is just kind of the way it is. It's the bureaucracy. Oh, it's set in stone, right? But then we see that when other people kind of try to fight through that barrier, they somehow are able to get through that. So I think that's the best way, people can support.
Lorna, I'm coming back to you with the same kind of question, really.
Okay. I did a panel recently. This is the 100th anniversary in the US of the Women Voting Rights Act and the suffrage. And as we talk about these things, women's right and all the things that we are going through, we have to go through it, women. We're always the one leading the charge to fight for change. We've always done that throughout life. And one of the things that really struck me is about Sojourner Truth in the history, where she says, it was told that woman is the one that turned the world upside down. So why not give us the power back? Let's take the power back and turn it right side up. And we just have to do it. And they're saying, men don't want to do it, but they better let us do it. And I think during this time of COVID, when we can sit and look back and see, and everything is just in our faces, because we can really see what's happening. I think now is a time for that change to occur with women, to take her rightful place again, not be bashful about it. Take it on strong, keep our feet on the pedal, and demand our worth, as someone previously said, because we are of value. We bring the change, we bring about change. We bring about we're the ones that are multitasking, doing things at home. So we need to just know our worth and not be afraid. You cannot lead by fear. There are consequences to everything. If you're going to go in the ring to box, you know that you may get a punch here and there, but you got to be ready to give another punch back. Exactly. And that's who we are. And that's what we have to do as women. Do not be afraid. Know our worth. Be ready to fight. Get the punch and give it back.
I love that.
And move on.
Thank you. Loreen, the same question to you.
Yeah, obviously I agree with the others. I think one of the issues that we face, like in the UK, is when you're talking about women and saying, we need to take our power back. Which women are we talking about here? Because if we're talking about, like we said, around intersectionality, when we're talking about racism, gender intersecting with race, so you do have women in positions of authority actually undermining other women. So this issue of allyship, like I said, co-conspirators, I think is very important. Is when we're thinking about, for example, like I said, I went to university and I've worked, like I said, in public sector, where I sit in a meeting and I'm the only brown person, not even just a brown woman. I'm the only brown person in the room. Any issue of equality and diversity and inclusion, I challenge it. I feel I need to challenge it, whether it's in discourse, whether it's talking about percentages, senior management interested in finance and percentages, strategies, and you're constantly being the one who's pushing back. So then you think about, who are the women around me? There could be other white women in the room, but they're not necessarily my allies. They're not necessarily on my side. And a good example is in the UK, when you talk about issues of EDI, because I've been working in this area for quite a long time, there's this view that there's only one seat at the table. And when you talk about sort of protected characteristics, disability, sexuality, marital status, race, gender, and everything else, there seems to be this view that if you talk about race, then those other people say, well, what about people with disabilities? Or what about transgender issues? Why should we always look at race? Why is it, even now with the Black Lives Matter movement, we are getting that. So even within the groups of women, yes, it's fantastic. In a perfect world, would all come together and push back and fight for our rights. But in real life, we do have some of those challenges of coming together in terms of solidarity. When we talk about feminism, my PhD, I use African feminist sort of scholarship, was thinking about this idea of solidarity, this idea of global sisterhood does not necessarily exist, because then people start pushing and pulling in different directions. So I think when we talk about issues of all women coming together, we really need to, how does that look like in practice when I'm the only brown woman in the room?
And there's a lot to be said about that. And I think, if people look at the diversity, they look at all the different things that people bring to the table and to the organization, it enriches the organization. People bring so much more. And I think it's about making sure you are an inclusive organization, that you are somebody that can pull out a chair and make sure that you reflect that. And I kind of make it a priority when I'm going to do a panel or a meeting or something, that I'm taking other women along with me. But I also know the other side of that is that I do a lot of mentoring and I do a lot of supporting of younger women, and I'm very passionate about empowering the next generation, to the point where I'm known as a sticky floor woman who's lifting the next generation off the sticky floor. But actually, one of the things that I have found really difficult is that I have friends who are lawyers, doctors, and women in banking and whatever sector. And they'll say to me, oh, Mandy, I've worked really hard. I've been here for 30 years and, I work so here. And then I always say to them, but if you know how hard that is, then why are you not trying to sort of learn from your experience, learn from those challenges, and actually support other women? I was just going to come to you, Shirley, but I've just seen a couple of points in here, and I think it was from Rachel. I really love the one that you put about Greta, that actually that young men perceive her as being aggressive. Actually, she's assertive and she's getting her point across. And actually, I feel sometimes that men and other people sometimes don't understand assertiveness, and they actually get the wrong A and they call it aggression. So, but I'm going to come to you, Shirley, with the same question, but feel free to add extra points if you like around assertiveness and aggression.
Sure, thank you. I still believe, I want to commend the other speakers or the other panelists. This, one of the speakers talked from a point of fierce and fearlessness, fiercelessness and fearlessness. We shouldn't be afraid as women to stand, put our foot down and demand our worth. But before you demand your worth, be sure that you are delivering commensurately, right? And it's important for us to hold each other's hands. Together we rise. We rise. We're stronger together, like the hashtag says. But this is beyond just a hashtag. I agree with Yanoh on the allyship and having co-conspirators, but we need to go beyond just talk. We need to go beyond just talk and begin to walk the talk. I also agree with you, Mandy, when you talk about mentorship. How are we carrying other women along? When you assume the position of leadership, how are you carrying other women along? Because it's not interesting, like they say, leadership is lonely at the top. It's not supposed to be lonely if we can do the right thing of, carrying ourselves together. I love the way that women are rising across the globe, and, in the same vein, women are also going into their shelves because, the environment out there, whether it's in the public or the private sector or in the political space, the environment out there is tough. But you've got to be tougher. You've got to show that you can do this, because when we continue to chicken out of fights or chicken out of the boxing ring, the men, the society begin to think that we are not capable. So we need to be able to take in the punch, like Lorna said. We need to be able to take the punch in, and we need to be able to stand firm and be fearless. But most importantly, we need to be able to carry others along. And it doesn't take much. Giving a woman a seat at the table. I've been in rooms where I walk in and I see that I'm actually the only woman. And I'm like, okay, there's something wrong here. And I begin to make suggestions and recommendations. It doesn't take anything to make room for the other woman, so that we're not amongst those people who, are talking about the women empowerment movement, and are actually not taking action to seeing that it happens.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, Lorna talked about, being a very important year for the 100th year for the suffragette movement, and where women had the right to vote. But actually, when you think about it, it was like another 30 to 40 years before Afro-Caribbean women were actually coming to the panel to vote. So actually, when we talk about sisterhood and we're talking about equality, and we're looking at things and we're thinking, great, we're on the right step and we're doing things properly, which is fantastic. But actually, I think that we cannot just be like, I'm an Asian woman, you're a black woman, Rachel's a woman of Caucasian, or Tessie is European. We have to look at this, that actually we belong to one race and it's called a human race. And I think that if we get those sort of basic values right, and then look at working together, then I think that we could achieve a lot of greater things. But actually, one of the things is, organizations then. So how can we support women to develop those skills then, the confidence, the willingness to go and sort of negotiate a salary? Not just about fear though, but actually, I want to sort of look at this, because actually I have sat in rooms and I have seen women negotiate their salaries, and they have gone in and they have, used, unions, or they've used other platforms to help them to do that. But you shouldn't have to do that in a way. But I just wanted to see if anyone's got any good experience or good examples. Who would like to answer that question first? I mean, Yanoh, I don't know if you want to, and then I'll come over to Loreen. I can see that you're kind of...
Yeah. I don't know. I'm still struggling with that as well. So it's tough. And I think there's the theory and there's the practical, right? Yeah. And I agree with Shirley that, yes, we need to stand up and we need to kind of demand our value. But also, to Loreen's point, I think we need to acknowledge our privilege, right? Some at this point, unfortunately, some Black women can't afford to do that, right? Because that might mean the difference between walking away from a job and keeping the job, right? Yeah, and yeah. I think some people can say, you know what, I demand this salary, and if I don't get the salary, it's okay, I'm going to walk away, and some of us can't at the moment. Yeah. So for me, I can admit that it's still a struggle for me, right? Because sometimes I look at it like, oh, well, maybe if I just get in the door, maybe in a year I can kind of negotiate my salary, and you find yourself kind of stagnant. So I'd love to hear from the other panelists on tips on that, because it's something that I struggle with as well. But I do know that we have to realize kind of the economic privilege for women to do that. And as I kind of touched on this earlier, repercussions. There's a lot of repercussions that we see for Black women and women of color that do demand these things, right? I mean, they don't come out and say that, you're leaving this organization because of that, but we see reorganization of positions, and we see a lot of kind of retaliation in other ways. So, I also think we need to find out how can we protect ourselves against that as well.
I'd like to I'd like to jump in. Can I jump in and say something
Yes,
there? Yeah.
please.
For me, for some of you ladies that may feel you find yourself in a position of no choice or no alternative, are there other creative ways that you could think? Are you in a profession or in that situation because that is the only thing that you want to do? Or can you start thinking about other options or other creative ways or I want to talk about two things, of finding another job. Can you look and try to find another job? Because when you feel like you're stuck into something, you're not going to be your best self. You're not going to be happy, and you're not going to be the best self or producing the best that you can. But if you can find that you can find a way where you can find something else, once you get that option and people realize that you're not dependent on that one situation, then you'll see they will react to you differently. And you may not even need to go and ask for a raise or whatever. You continue to do your best work, but you try to find alternative outside of that place or that workspace. You may have to change your job for a while. You're a teacher now. You may not, you may want to try to be something else for a while and then maybe come back to it, or until you can get the value that you feel you're worth. But when you're trapped, it's a different situation. Never feel trapped in a situation. Try to use your creative woman's imagination to do something else where that they will want to come back to you. Another thing is I want to talk about with women being the only one in the room. Sometimes a lot of us are feeling good that we think we're so much better because we're the only one in the room, and we don't think about creative ways of bringing other people in with us because we like being the only one in the room. And I think that me mentality that we have sometimes as women needs to change. And once we start changing that view, that if we bring somebody else in the room, it will uplift us and make us stronger and give us a more legacy to know that I have mentored someone, to bring somebody in the room and to mentor them,
Absolutely.
that they can grow. I think a lot of that is missing in us as women. And as we become more confident in ourselves, we tend to do that. Another thing is that with getting allies, like a lot of times, having an ally of a different race, like a white ally, sometimes will help us to get there, will help us to grow. So we have to look at all our creative juices within us as women. We have to use all of our senses in order to get there. And when we get there, bring others along with us. So those are just, what I think from experience, just little highlights that we may want to consider as women.
Brilliant. Loreen, I'm going to ask you the same question.
Yes, I definitely agree with Lorna around pulling other women and bringing other women with you. I think one of the things we also need to think about is when you're talking about, like saying about salaries and negotiating a salary, is we need to backtrack a bit. Because just to read you some of the statistics, there was research done by Robbie Shillam, who says in academia, is it 61.3% of Black staff are on fixed term contracts, and also more Black staff are on teaching only and teaching and research contracts. So we need to backtrack that before we even get an opportunity for you to negotiate a salary and think about what you bring to the table. Has the woman been given the opportunity to get that mentoring, the training to build up those skills and develop?
Okay.
That's how we need to start from, is in academia, that ethnic minority women are given teaching only contracts. I've been on a teaching only contract where all you're doing is teaching and do not have the time to publish, do not have the time to do any other projects. That's part of building up your career. So then ethnic minority women don't have those skills, don't develop and have that experience. Also, another example is at the moment, I think I posted before, that UK research and innovation, £4.3 million made available to researchers around COVID and BAME, Black, Asian, minority ethnic groups, and how they've been affected. There's money being made available, but zero of amount of that money has been given to any Black academic as a lead.
Yeah.
So these are the challenges we face, that no money has been, this is researching our communities, our families, our communities within which we live, but none of that money is going to any ethnic minority academics as leads. So these are the challenges that as Black women, ethnic minority academics face. So I think before we even talk about, I guess within a UK context, is before we talk about in terms of actually being at the table, is thinking about some of the barriers, not just for ourselves in terms of individual experience, but research over and over again has shown that Black women experience, diverse of discrimination and exclusions. So I think it's also important that we raise that point.
Yeah, and I think also, just I saw Susan's made a comment that actually she was somebody that actually suffered discrimination for being a woman, and she's talking about being a Caucasian woman and actually talking about that. But it's quite interesting because I know that a lot of people can be discriminated against because actually there's ageism and disability, but I think it's just about the conversation around intersectionalities as well. So I'm going to come to you, Shirley, and then I'm going to come to everyone for a call for action, and then we'll go to the question. So Shirley, have you got anything else that you would like to add?
Okay, thank you very much, Mandy. So I, as an executive coach, I also teach confidence, building and boosting your confidence level. I believe so much in having confidence in yourself. Now, when you talk about mentorship, not everybody is just going to say yes to mentor anyone. I've got mentors and I've got mentees. Now, you have to also be teachable. You have to be ready to receive mentorship, okay, at all levels, you know. So it is positioning yourself, making yourself teachable, making yourself mentorable, if there is a word like that. But beyond all of everyone else's contribution on this particular question about skills, about the skills with which women can use, you know, especially in these vulnerable times, networking, you know, it's important to leverage on, you know, the power of networking, because that's how we build connections. That's how we build sisterhood. You know, you're not just going to jump into my circle or jump into my space and expect me to lift your hand up because you're a woman. I'm giving tough love here, you know. Now, because we are women, that doesn't mean that I'm going to just lift you up or give you a space on the table. I need to know what you're bringing. Are you able to develop, to discover your worth, discover your potential, and then begin to develop the skills you need to position yourself in such a way that you are not your, excuse my French, okay, let me not go that way right now, but you know, to get to the point where you are not ignorable. I was going to say unfuckwithable. Sorry, guys. Sorry, ladies. But you to put yourself in a position where the men are looking for the woman who is going to take that, to take a position, a woman who is going to bring other women on board, a woman who is going to, you know, steer the company or steer the environment or push limits, because there are still women out there who are doing these things and people are recognizing them. So how are you positioning yourself? I know we struggle with a lot of things, and it's okay. It's okay to acknowledge that you are in that space. But now we're talking about what skills we need for women to leverage on in these times, especially post-COVID, right? You need to embrace networking. Start connecting with people. Collaboration is very key to rising the ladder, to putting yourself out there. You know, I'm here by virtue of my connection with Tessie. And perhaps you may not have seen me as a person of value if I was not contributing, if I was not out there, if I was not putting my voice in places that matter. So it is not because I just want to show off, but that's what your personal branding does for you. It speaks about your value even before you step into the room. So women, we need to start developing ourselves until you discover who you are and begin to develop your skills, leverage on networks, leverage on relationships. You won't be able to deploy the value that is within you. We have so much potential, but have we positioned ourselves deploy that and to be seen, to be heard, to be noticed, and to say, come on board, be my vice president, or come on board and take up this role, come on board, and come on, there's a whole lot. We need to stop the pity party. You are a human being. Forget about gender. You are a human being. So regardless of your gender, it doesn't stop. You're not less advantaged. You are not less advantaged. So let's try to change the narrative. We all struggle at different levels. Yes, we need to change the mindset, and we need to make ourselves available to mentor others, because there's so many people with different struggles. But when you make yourself available to mentor, the mentees or the proposed mentees should also make themselves teachable and ready to receive. So my key point in all that I've said is network. Leverage LinkedIn, leverage other platforms, but before you get on there, make sure that you understand your source.
Yeah. And I also want to say, it is a really good point. And I think that people don't value or recognize the value of social capital about your network. So actually, if you think about yourself and think about who else is in your network, and LinkedIn's a clever tool, because actually it shows you the 2-3 degree separation from a lot of people. And it is about looking at different opportunities and actually having the confidence to actually big yourself up, because actually you have to learn to become your own cheerleader, and then everyone else will follow you and everyone will believe you and buy into you. And somebody who's been campaigning for 30 years plus and who is still here at the top of their game, and actually I have suffered discrimination and everything else, but I always say, not why me, try me, and I will keep moving forward. And actually, if it is a challenge, I will keep learning from it and I will become more resilient. But it does take time. It takes a lot of rejection sometimes, but I don't take that personally, because I think if that door shut for me, I knocked on it, I gave it a go, but it wasn't for me, I move on, I try for something better, and different doors will keep opening. And I think it's about, I want to ask everyone now for a call for action, and maybe going to ask you a personal goal that you're going to set yourself to become a little bit more resilient. So I'm going to start with Yanoh. I'm going to ask you really your call for action, and maybe get you to think about a goal for yourself that you would like to maybe give yourself for the next sort of 6 months maybe, and sort of work towards a goal.
Yeah, I think just echoing off what Shirley is saying, kind of just leveraging the networking. I think networking has always been a challenge for me. And I know it's something that I need to get better at. So that's something that I'm definitely going to work on. And I kind of put that call out to action for everyone. Because I think, unless you're a very extroverted person, I think networking is, when I speak to other women of color, they all say that networking is challenging for them. So I think for me, that's kind of what I've set out to ensure, that like every time I have an opportunity, I leverage, networks, and I leverage contacts, and don't be scared to send an email to someone you came across, or LinkedIn and all these other networks, these resources that we do have access to, right? It doesn't really matter. We have those access to. So that's kind of my personal call to action. And I kind of challenge everyone to, and even if you feel like you are networking, network more, right? I think
exactly. You can never network enough. You cannot network enough, honestly. Right. Trust me, it's the truth.
Totally. Yep.
Brilliant. Lorna, same question. Call for action, and sort of what's your goal?
Yeah, my call for action is create your own. If you can't find, all the wonderful things Shirley says, it's, I agree with it. That's who I am, and that's what I try to do every day. When I get a punch, I just, my way of punching back is to go work harder, see what it is that I did wrong, what I could have changed, or create my own. If you don't have a space for me, Shirley Chisholm says, if you don't have a seat at the table, bring your own folding chair. So I try to create my own, bring my own folding chair, invest in myself. And right now I'm doing a show, my virtual town hall. And we were talking about building the bridge between, different situations. I call it One Nation Under God, Indivisible, and an experience to invest to one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, is to allow for liberty and justice for all. So my way is creating my own virtual town hall. I am, I continue to do my networking, investing in myself, um, making myself indispensable. You want to
Yeah.
work so hard and make yourself so valuable that people come to you, not you have to go to them.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I have decided to do, to make myself, to work hard, get all my creative juices out, bring people along with me, continue to network, find out the value in young people, mentor them so that they don't have to go through the same thing that I have gone through, and make sure that my legacy will live on through
Yeah.
others. So that's a good way to look at it. It's to make sure that your legacy lives on through others by mentoring them. So I've decided to mentor younger kids more and to make sure that they have a seat at the table and know how to get there as they grow older, because it's a new generation. They're more creative, they're more technology savvy, and I'm learning from them as I teach them. So that's one of my goals, and that's why that's one of the things I would extend to others, to
Yeah.
try, not be afraid to try new things, and fear
I
will
like.
keep you back. So breathe and not allow fear to keep you back.
I really like that. And I think, you know what, once you know your worth and you know that you're not going to lower your value based on somebody else's assumption on you, trust me, your life will change. And it is about a mindset. It's a switch in your head that you have to flick off and sort of say, no, actually, I know what I bring to the table. I know my worth, but it's that confidence. And people will be drawn to you and want to buy into that. But it does take a long time. But it is about teaching resilience. It's about doing that. And I think now more than ever, I'm going to come to you, Loreen, just ask you for your call for action and your goal.
So, sorry, one point. I think just to clarify that we're not raising issues around some of the challenges. It's not to say it's having a pity party. It's
No.
not to say I'm a victim, because I'm not, and I've never seen myself as a victim.
Yeah.
Raising awareness of issues is not saying it's a negative thing. I just needed to clarify that was not a pity party. That was not I'm a victim. We Black women in the UK are victims. No, actually, there's amazing work that's being done by women all over the country, ethnic minority women. So, answering your question, for me, I've always worked with communities. I've always used my skills, my knowledge to help other people, to work with communities and influence policy. So going forward, I'm challenging myself to look at innovative ways in which I can still continue to use my skills post-COVID.
Yeah.
In what ways, using technology, now that face-to-face is reduced, we're now working in these new ways. In what ways can I continue to influence policy? In what ways can I continue to work with organizations so that they better work with marginalized communities and bring their voice to the center? So I think it's just innovative ways of continuing to work and do the work I do and bring my skills and knowledge post-COVID with these new ways of working.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Loreen. And Shirley, for you, finally, a question. That's one question.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Loreen, for throwing more light on your contribution. In response to that, I was speaking generally and not because you were, but of course I understand. So, Mandy, you've done a very great job with all of this, and I want to thank my co-panelists for your very laudable contributions and experiences that you have shared. For me, my call to action is going to be to lead by example. You know, for whatever it is we want to see out there, we should be the change that we want to see. We should start with ourselves. That is my call to action. Having said that, because I see even from the comment section that there are a couple of women who I think need some sort of mentorship, you know. And recently I was nominated amongst the top 50 people of impact on LinkedIn. I don't know how I got that nomination, but I cannot say I don't know how. I think we need to learn to own our yes. So I can't say that I don't know how, because that's not the only nomination I've gotten in this COVID time. But what am I trying to say? I want to be able to take on a few women who are here. I charge for these courses. I charge for these coaching sessions, but I'm offering it to women here free of charge. You just need to send me a DM on LinkedIn. if you're having problems with your networking, how to up-level your networking skills, how to build or optimize your confidence. These two things, I want to mentor you on that. So that is my call to action, to give back. And that is what I see. So if you're interested, please, by all means, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Shirley Hills on LinkedIn. And I hope that I can inspire you and help you, coach you to the next level. God bless you.
Brilliant. No, thank you. And one of the things is, there's a really good question that Ethel has put about, she's curious if there's any men on this chat. I know the last conversation was a lot of men. I don't know if any of them have stayed on the chat. I don't know if Mariam's able to tell me that. Is there any males still on our chat?
Yes, there is. I can see them on the conversation, but I don't think they're participating as much as last
Okay.
panel.
No, that's fine. So one of the things is, because actually one of the things that I'm very passionate about is actually making sure that men are a part of the conversation as well. Because actually, if we want change and we want impact and we want lasting change, men have to be a part of the conversation. We cannot talk to ourselves and expect the same outcomes, because it's not going to work. So when I do work around gender-based violence and other issues around the world, I have to work with the men, because actually they are sometimes the solution. They are the gatekeepers. They're the people that are going to allow me to make that difference. So I think that, it's really important that we look at addressing this issue. It's been some really good comments that have been coming in on the chat. And I've just wanted to make sure I haven't missed anything. But all I would say to everyone, I want to say thank you to all the panelists. I think you've shared a lot of great wisdom, and this conversation can go on for a lot longer than just an hour. We've just touched the tip of the iceberg in this conversation. It's a conversation that needs to continue. Shirley, we appreciate that you are offering people opportunities to be mentored and be supported by you. That's a great opportunity.